Hello. Today we are talking about the cross. Basically, what I'm going to talk about is why this should never happen in your drawings. You should not have an object of some sort where a feature has a line going through it. Like that. Because this never happens. It confuses you because we don't know which of these is in the foreground or the background. So if you have something, two things crossing, like so, that is actually what's happening. You have one object on top of the other. If I was tracing something, I would also say that a line crossing another will never really actually happen in a real life situation. It is like having two objects occupying the same space, but what really happens if that manifests is that they intersect and they become one, they join. You still don't have a line crossing. Yeah. I don't even know that is a common issue. I really don't. Although the reason I'm bringing it up is because it was sort of a common issue with my drawing, and it just makes things look messy. If we have a line, an object coming at it, because I'm not going to say I draw lines. A line is something else. I draw an object. It will either smush into it, or it will overlap, or it will go behind. It will not cross at all, ever. What may happen is, say I have a head and we have hair. You want to say, but I have a hair that starts somewhere there and it lurches out. That is one of the few cases where having those lines cross may be acceptable. Generally not. As a rule, it's something that should be avoided altogether. Even sometimes people do hatching to shade. I have found that I don't like to cross those lines either. I just kind of go with it, so that we don't confuse ourselves. Maybe, what if something like this happens? That looks weird. What we're actually seeing is the corner of a cube on the floor or some such, sitting on top of something else. If we have a line coming out like that, we don't want to have a corresponding We have lines coming out like that. We don't want to have corresponding lines on the other side generally, because that will be confusing. This is based off of my own experience. I don't think I've seen that many drawings. I rarely look at amateur drawings other than my own. So I can't tell you what mistakes people make, because a lot of the drawings that I've seen other people do are better than mine, so it's really hard to say if this is a common occurrence. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about was proportion of a line. I usually thicken my lines. Some people like to have a lot of single lines that don't really touch one another, which is fine. That's one way of doing things. But I generally will go over and over and over a line like this. A line kind of in the middle is pretty lonely. You really need to add something to it, even just thickening it. But even just a thick line by itself is pretty lonely. And if I were Bob Ross, I would say it needs a friend. Lines need friends. Yeah. I mean, there's modern works that have one line. It's usually a pretty broad stroke. It's not a single page with a single line going through it all by itself. Although maybe there probably is something like that out there, but right now I'm not aware of it. I think what I want to get across with thickening lines is that without something beside this, I don't think our brains know what to do with it. Like, you can turn it into a symbol, like a letter here, and then we instantly recognize this. But I think something like this, we're trying to see what else is here, right? So maybe I have a little arc, which I will turn into a nub. And then it is some sort of meteor hurtling towards this shadow from the sky, right? And I don't know what a meteor looks like. Is it still a meteor when it's in the atmosphere, or does it turn into a meteorite when it hits the ground? I'm not sure. Yeah. So I think line thickness can add sort of depth to our image, and it can also draw attention towards a particular feature. A drawing with all the same line widths may be interesting. but you probably need a fair amount of lines in there. Otherwise, they're too lonely. And they will look like they need friends, because they do. Yeah, so I was thinking that this would take longer, because I don't have too many hard and fast rules when I draw. Use nubs, use them like Lego. Don't cross the streams or lines. Right here, I don't want little nubs there. Oh, the one thing I also wanted to talk about was inflection points. We have a line or a curve. Where that curve changes is an inflection point. And our eyes, our brains are highly tuned to inflection points. So if we see something happening there, with like a change in the curve, we will notice it right away. If you want to get rid of this, you can add so that it becomes a pattern. And our brains kind of gloss over patterns. Just say like, oh, there's a checker. What they will see are deviations from the pattern, which is basically an inflection point. So we can kind of add interest to things. We can make a line look rough, right? Can make it kind of ziggy, zaggy, rough, sorta. And we'll see this as a pattern and not like individual teeth unless we kind of draw those in. So if your hand shakes a lot, not a big deal. If everything looks shaky, that's not terrible. That's really not a big deal. You don't have to be, you have to have some fine motor skills, but I mean, you don't need to worry about it with tweezers or anything. If you want to get rid of shaking, you can also just do little dashes. That's not bad either. But try, I guess, not to cross these, because you want to maintain your line integrity. If a line gets crossed, it loses its integrity. Yeah. So the reason that I'm not making any sense is because I wanted to talk about 3D rendering, but I discovered that if I didn't do my research and use the terminology I had stored vestigially in my brain, I would sound like I had no idea what I was talking about. And with 3D rendering, there's a lot of vocabulary there, which I wanted to go over, because those ideas help you understand real objects and how we see them. And that's again my common theme, right? If we understand how we see and how our brain turns the world into a representation of the world, we will be better equipped to produce nice looking representations. Yeah. So today we learned not to cross the streams. Don't make crosses. Do it like that if things are going to overlap. And lines get lonely. So they don't even need that many friends, really. They just need maybe one or two friends, just a companion. Right. All right. That's about it.